I went on the worst cruise ever, and I'm going to tell you all about what I would have done to make it a better experience. I'm first of all going to try to sit differently because Jackie says that I sit too close to the screen and it makes it impossible for her to edit reels. So that's what I'm doing. Oh, okay. I feel like there's no way that's too close, right? We're going to move this down. Oh, whoops. If you're watching on YouTube right now, that's getting kind of crazy. All right. So, hi guys. So sorry for my absence last week. I was on a cruise with my family and it was madness. Oh my goodness, I'm going to tell you guys the entire story, but basically, I couldn't help myself but to critique everything in a way where I was, feeling kind of bad for the cruise line, but at the same time, like thinking about everything I would have done differently if I was in their shoes. And obviously, it's easy for me to say because I'm not working there. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. However, there's always things that we can do better. And with the right resources, I think that it could have been a much better experience. So we're going to go through it. But the two themes that I think that we can apply to any business is transparency and communication. Those two things. And also, those are the two things. Transparency and communication. That's going to be the theme here. Because if those things were improved, this experience would have been so much better. But I think there was about 2,000 people on this ship, and the energy and the feedback that I was hearing as a passenger was that a lot of these people will never take this cruise line again because of the experience they had. So we're going to dive into it. I also realized that, I personally didn't want to complain because I was just happy to have a break from work and I got to sit in the sun and all these things. And I just felt blessed to be even able to have an experience like that. So I want to preface it with that, where even though this experience wasn't exactly how it should have been, I personally was very, very grateful for how everything turned out. But other people are not as kind. And also you're messing with people's hard-earned money and time. So I understand why people were so upset. So let's go back to the beginning. So as you guys know, there was the IT outage that affected so many things on Saturday morning, Saturday in the middle of the night. And so my flight, for example, I woke up on the cruise was set to leave on, which day was it? Let's just say, I might be getting the days mixed up, but let's say it was set to leave on Saturday and I got into Orlando on Friday. Now, on Friday, so whenever you take a cruise or you're going on a trip where you need to take connecting anything, it's always a good idea to get there the day before because you never know what's going to happen with that flight. And so that's what my grandma and I had planned. We planned to get there a day early just in case there was flight delays, whatever, and so that we could, get there by the time the ship took off. So grandma and I, luckily, we flew Southwest. So Southwest was one of the only airlines that was operating properly. I thought it was funny too because I am the person who gets to the airport right as it's boarding because I don't want to sit there and I live on the edge a little bit, and I've also just become way too comfortable with airports. And I got into my Uber. Well, first of all, I woke up to a text from my grandma that said at the gate, and that was 20 minutes before I even woke up. So my grandma was sitting there at the gate when I was still sleeping. That's how late I get to the airport. So I got my Uber. I got to the airport. In my Uber's like, "Oh, did you hear what's happening? What?" Because he knew he was bringing me to the airport. He was like, "Delta, United, American, all these airlines are down." I'm like, "Where are you? What are you flying out of?" Blah blah blah. There's this IT thing, and also I was a little bit nervous because he was pulling over to like show me articles, but I was like, "Hey, can you just get me to the airport? Because you're telling me that there's all these delays, but you're like pulling over and delaying my, I timed this perfectly and I did not plan to have any delays. So can you just bring me to the airport?" So I was a little bit like, I usually don't freak out, but I was like taking deep breaths, like, be cool, be cool. And so I get to the airport. TSA was crazy, but I have clear. Shout out to Amex. If you have an Amex card, you can get it for, or Amex Platinum. You can get it for free every year. I should put my Amex like referral link in the show notes. Jackie, if you, I'll send it to you, Jackie, so you can put it in the show notes. But basically, I have clear. I skipped through like all the TSA. I got there. I walked up. Cool, calm, collected, with still some minutes to board or to before boarding, and grandma's there. Everything's good and dandy. We started getting texts from like our other family members because there was 14 of us going on this cruise. It was my grandma and all of her kids and their kids. And so there's 14 of us all meeting, all going from around the world, around the US to Florida. So we started getting texts about people's flights being whatever. It ended up that my cousins from Pennsylvania and my cousins from North Carolina, they had to drive because their flights got canceled. They had to drive from Pennsylvania to Florida and from North Carolina to Florida. And my family in Chicago somehow, they were also on Southwest, so they didn't get affected. So already this is kind of hectic because people are having to drive when they didn't need to drive. As soon as my grandma and I got to the airport, we got a text from the cruise line. Should I expose which cruise line? Yeah, whatever. We're gonna talk about it. The cruise line was Norwegian. Norwegian texted us, and first of all, obviously these things are unexpected, and so that is understandable, right? That they can't control some of these things, right? And so we need to make sure that as consumers and as passengers or customers or whatever, that we leave grace for the inevitable, with things that just pop up and it's out of people's control. So we do have to give grace for that. So this text message said that the cruise was actually going to be delayed an entire day. So we were losing a day. And the first initial this text message that we got, maybe I'll post a picture of it. Hold on, I need to make a list of things because Jackie's gonna be needing these things, and I'm gonna forget what I promised her. So I need to send Jackie Amex link, and I need to send Jackie a screenshot of this text message. So this text message, though, had multiple typos and grammar issues. And so it was kind of like one of those things when you think about building a brand or building a business and whatever, things can be like, they don't have to be perfect, but every time you kind of slip up and have some type of like unprofessionalism that you don't correct, it just like starts to subconsciously, or maybe not even subconsciously, but definitely subconsciously lose trust in your consumers or customers. So it was already kind of like oh my goodness, like everything's such a mess. Look at all these typos in this, whatever. And this text message, they kept resending it to everyone, probably just to make sure that people like got the communication as soon as possible, whatever. So that was great. Like, over communicated, but every time they sent it, it had all these typos. It was like a copy paste. Like, wouldn't you think that before you sent it again, you would like reread it? But that's not that big of a deal. But it was just like interesting that that's how it started. So we already know we're all losing a day of the cruise. This is kind of a good thing. This is kind of it kind of stinks, but when there was a lot of people trying to get to this cruise, that their flights were getting messed up and, driving, all of these things. So it was very, very nice of them to hold the cruise. They took a day away from the people who were there on time, but they also gave a lot of grace and to the people who were going to miss the entire cruise. So that was fine. It sucks because, we lost a day. But I feel bad for all of these things happening because I guess it turned out speculations, not really sure exactly what happened, but there may or may not have been also a problem with the ship where they needed repairs, something with the engine. I'm not sure. But basically the cruise, I guess, that was on there now couldn't get, that was on the cruise currently, couldn't get back to shore, and they got an extra day. I have no idea if they needed to pay for that extra day. Probably not. There's no way, like, whatever. So I'm also in my customer experience business brain thinking about like, this like is probably costing Norwegian a lot of money. I don't know how insurance works for them, whatever. But, okay, so we're losing a day. They send out this great email that I thought was amazing with, taking the situation and making the most out of it. I personally thought that they came out with this new agenda really, really quickly compared to, they tell us, I'm sure that they timed it pretty well where they knew that they were going to have to delay it. They send out this text message, then they send out an email with more information. Now, what stinks is there was lots of changes, so I can't remember exactly all, but we lost days on the cruise, so they had to change all of our port stops and like excursions, all those things. So they outlined all of the, we're not going here, but we're going here instead. We ended up losing in the end. It was a cruise to, originally it was going to be the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Virgin Islands. We ended up only going to Bahamas and Dominican Republic. And again, I can't complain. I love to travel and love to be in the sun. So those couple places were fine for me, but I really was looking forward to going to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands because I'd never been there before. So whatever. But at the bottom of this email, it did outline some things that they were going to do because of the delays. They had some reimbursements for hotels and they had reimbursements for flights, and then they also gave an extra $100 of onboard credit, all these things, and they try to like make it right as much as they could in this email. Now, this is important because I think that this email was a good start because it was going to be a good start because they had good communication, or pretty good communication, I would say, besides those typos. And then they also gave us something because of the disappointment. Because when you disappoint someone, you have to think of something to turn that disappointment around. So they gave solutions for everything. Now, these passengers are already so frantic because they've got their flights, everything's all messed up. And then they also have all these issues where, now there's a bunch of people stranded in Florida who were planning to get onto a ship that day, and now they have nowhere to stay. So there was a lot of hectic things going on. And that was one piece that they missed where I don't think that they needed to do this, but offering solutions for places to stay or anything, even just like resources maybe would have been nice. Everyone obviously figured it out, but our family personally, we had rooms booked at this hotel, but when we tried to extend it, they didn't have enough rooms for us because there was change in plans. And so like all of these people are trying to get whatever, and all of the hotels around were booked. So we were fine. We had to like squish into less rooms than we wanted to, but we were okay. It was just very hectic because we're like, is everyone going to make it here on time? My cousins from North Carolina were driving in pouring rain the entire time. Like my grandma's freaking out. She's thinking that like people aren't, just aren't safe. We just want them to be here. Everyone's high stress even before getting onto this cruise. Okay. So you just have to keep that all in mind. Again, I'm a pretty cool, calm, collected cucumber, and I'm like, it is what it is. Like, you can only control what you can control, whatever. So we spent the day in Florida. I went to the beach, went Ron John's surf shop, all those things, had fun. And then it was time to go on the cruise the next day. Getting onto the cruise, all went well. They take your luggage. They deliver your luggage to your room. My luggage didn't show up. And when we got onto the ship, it was supposed to take off, right? We were supposed to go straight to the Dominican Republic, I think. And maybe at this time we were still going to go to the Virgin Islands, but we were going to skip over Puerto Rico. I think that was what it was, something like that. So we were all supposed to get on the ship and take off to wherever we were going. And we get on the ship, and I think everyone had to be on the ship by like 2 p.m. for 4 p.m. was like the very, very last cutoff. And then 6 p.m. we were going to take off. 6 p.m. rolls around. They were supposed to have this send-off party on the pool deck where we're going to cheer that we're all going on this cruise. Woohoo. And they make an announcement saying that they're still having problems and they can't take off. So then people are like, oh, this sucks because we are already all messed up. We're already missing a day, whatever. And that announcement was the last time they made an announcement, and they didn't have an update when they made that announcement. They just said, we're not taking off right now. So this is when people, I think right in this moment, it was fine, because they're like, oh, whatever, it is what it is. And maybe it's going to be 30 minutes. We're going to still get to where we're going on time and whatever. So then everyone was supposed to get their bags by 8 p.m. I kept checking my room because I was in a tank top and jean shorts and a bikini, and I was going in and out of the pool, and I'm all wet, and I'm like, I want to change because I'm like, all my clothes are wet, and like my bags should be there. So I kept going back and checking to see if my bags were there. My bags didn't show up. So they were supposed to show up by 8 p.m. I gave it till 8:45, and I was like, dang, my shit's not here. And when you drop off your bag, you have this, like, you put a tag on it, and I like laminated that tag on there. So because I was like, I don't want my shit to get lost, I'm gonna laminate this baby on there. I knew that I did a good job putting that tag on there. I even had my uncle check it. And so you have to go to guest services. Now, one more theme that I didn't mention before. There was a feeling of people on this ship, or the staff on this ship was, I want to say that it felt like they were understaffed. They were either understaffed or poorly organized or something. Because it seemed like there wasn't enough people around to do all of the things Who knows what could have happened? Maybe people, like, again, I don't know the whole story. Maybe they were planning on having all this crew there and they got stuck because of the cyber stuff. You never really know what's going on behind the scenes. And that's why I personally like to give a lot of grace. But I had to go and stand in guest services line. Fine, whatever. I need to find my luggage. I called my guy, because each room has like a attendant to it, or like each floor, and so you have like someone you can call if you have problems. I called my problem. I called my dude, and I'm like, "Hi, it's 8:45 and I haven't got my bag." And he goes, "Oh, it's probably lost. Go to guest services." And I was like, "Okay, cool." He was friendly enough. It was fine. I do think that, like, because of everything going on, that it's hard to find this balance of you almost need to be like extra kind because you know of all of these things going on, but then it's also hard to be kind because people are being mean to you, all these things. So like, I feel like in that moment of all of these things compounding and then my luggage being lost, that maybe they could have just been a little bit nicer. Whatever, it's not that big of a deal, but again, all of these little things add up, right? So I walk my happy ass down to the guest services and I stand in this long ass line. Now it is 9 p.m. or I got in line around the 8:45 and we were supposed to leave at 6 p.m. We were supposed to leave at 2 p.m. I think the day before. So now it is 9 p.m. the next day. So we've lost 2 whole days now at least we were like on the ship the next day. Like the day before we couldn't even be on the ship, but we were just on the ship, not moving. Now I'm standing in this guest services line. In my little customer experience brain, this is what I was like, oh gosh, I want to just help. I just feel so bad because there's like this, everything's getting done wrong. It's just getting done wrong. I'm looking, so there's 2 people working at guest services. There's probably 30, 40 people in line and 2 people working. And these people at guest services, they were doing all of these things. Listen to this. And I probably don't even know all of them. They were helping with dinner reservations. They were helping with signing up for shore excursions. They were helping people find their luggage. They were helping people get new key cards if they lost it. They were helping people get off of the ship because they didn't want to be there anymore because they were so fed up with everything going on. They were, answering questions about billing. They were answering, they were doing literally everything. And like with 2 people and no organization, there was just like nothing. In my head, this is what I would have done differently. So another thing is like efficiency and organization. I would have, and the other thing was there seemed to be, again, I don't know all the ins and outs of operating a cruise ship. I'm sure it's not easy. I'm not going to pretend like it is. But there seemed to be some like staff standing around, seemingly doing nothing. I'm sure they had some type of purpose, but it just was hard to see staff just like standing there when there's like so many upset people. So in this situation, what I wanted to do, even just as a passenger, I wanted to go down the line and ask every single person the topic of what they were needing help with. And you see this happening, you see this in lines all the time, but just give me the topic, because every like 4th person I could see was going into this like back room because they had the same problem with the luggage, right? And if they could have just, this is one example, right? Gone through the line and say, what are you here for? What are you here for? What are you here for? And then you're like, luggage. Okay, you guys come with me. I can take 6 people at once. What does yours look like? What does yours look like? Hold on, let me check. Okay, you come in here, you come in here, you come in here. Like, 1/6 of the line would have been gone in 20 minutes. I stood in line for an hour and a half to find my luggage. Thankfully, they had it in that little luggage room. The tag fell off. It wasn't a big deal. But I stood there in the line for an hour and a half thinking, adding up everything that I had in my luggage of like how much it's going to cost me. What do I even lose? What I should have put an air tag in there. All these things. Like I was standing there just like, oh shoot, I hope they have my luggage. All I have is this bikini and these jean shorts and this tank top. Like I was actually like also again, calm, cool, collective, but I was just like, dang, that will suck if I don't have any of my things. And then also I hope that they're not lost forever because I like my things and they're just things and they can be replaced kind of, but also I don't know. I want my things. So there for an hour and a half. During this hour and a half, people are talking in the lines and they're not happy. This is, they, again, the cruise line, the last update they gave us was at 6 p.m. that the ship wasn't going to move and nothing else. And so this is where communication and transparency would have been very, very valuable at that moment, or give us something, give us some type of communication of like, this could take this amount of time. So we're sorry, but we're working our hardest, right? The other thing in this moment, and it's going to escalate soon, but remember that email they sent with all of the accommodations and what they're doing to like make up for it? I think that they could have combated all of this anger from these passengers if they just reminded us of what we did have, because in just like funny, cheerful ways. Like, for example, they gave us an additional $100 onboard credit. They could have made announcements and said, I'm sorry, we're not taking off. Like, it's just not our, the universe is against us. I don't know, some kind of like witty thing, but don't forget that you have $100 to spend on the ship. So if you want to use it now, this is a good time to grab a drink and blah, 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 or whatever. Anything to just like remind us what they gave us, because people are just they just need some type of positivity, because right now they're just negative. So, standing in line. Now, the person behind me, I was like, I was actually standing there just like in my bikini top because my shirt was all wet. And so I felt a need to have to explain myself to the people in line that I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be just in a bikini, but like I don't have my luggage. So that's what I'm in line for. What are you in line for? This lady goes, I want to get off the ship. It's my birthday and it's my honeymoon. And I have just wasted 2 days of my honeymoon and my birthday just sitting here waiting around. And I'm so mad because I waited so long for this trip. We saved our money for this, and like it's just like it's not. And now we're nervous because we're hearing rumors that the ship is not working properly. And so what if we get out into the middle of the ocean and the ship stops working? What if, like, I was like, oh God, people are much more worried than I am, and like rightfully so. Like, you can't just strand people on this boat that's not operating well and not give them updates. I was like, oh, this is not going well. And then the person in front of me, same thing. They want to get off the ship. They're like, I want to go home. They're like, just get me off this ship. This is 2 days of no movement, and they're not doing anything. They're not giving us communication. There's no announcements. And so that's where I'm like, dang, like, all of this could have been prevented. This anger on literally, like, it's supposed to be day 2, but it's day 1 kind of, because of it being pushed back. People are mad. They want to go to Puerto Rico. Like, my one cousin, she's Puerto Rican, and we were looking forward to going to Puerto Rico, like where her family's from, like all these things. I just like there's sentiment and hard work behind people being there that felt like it was ignored. And I have empathy for the cruise line because I know how it is where it's hard for things to be it's hard when things are out of your control. But I also have been in situations where you don't know what to do, so you do nothing. And that's actually the worst thing you can do, because you can at least be transparent with what's going on, even if you don't have a solution. And that's where I think like this kind of spiraled, because they didn't make announcements, and I'm sure there was like so much going on. But even if they didn't have an answer, people were getting scared. They were scared because they were like, is this ship, like, let us off this boat, going crazy. So then, okay, so that's going on in the line. Up at the counter for the person who is, up at the counter, there was a, some type of issue. I think this lady, maybe she got locked out of her room or something and they couldn't help her. I don't know exactly what her situation is, but she starts screaming at the top of her lungs to the staff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I felt so bad for the staff, because I'm like, oh, they probably are just doing what they're told, and they don't really have, say, I'm not sure. I don't know all the details, but these poor people are being yelled at, and it's only day one of, they probably are just like dealing with so many angry people. And this lady is screaming at them, screaming. I was like, oh. And we're in like this open area where like it was 2 floors, but the second floor can see down to the first floor. There's like this big lobby. Everyone's watching. After she's done screaming, everyone's clapping. All the passengers are clapping. I'm like, oh God. And then someone in line screams at that girl. Another passenger screams at this screaming passenger who's screaming at the staff and says, other people are waiting in line too, you B word. Screamed B word. This man called this lady a bitch because he's impatient, because he's in line. People are going crazy. And it's all like, I was like, oh my gosh, people are going to start killing each other over being like on this cruise ship because we don't have any communication, and people are getting afraid. They're stuck. People don't like feeling stuck. And you've got 2,000 people stuck on this cruise ship. He's screaming at this lady. The girl in front of him turns around and she goes, you don't know her. You can't call her a bitch. Fair. I was like, ooh, strong female energy. I love it. But this is and they're in each other's faces, and they're screaming and they're screaming and screaming and screaming. And they're like, oh my God. It was like, what is going on right now? People were filming. I should find these videos somewhere, but people were filming. They're screaming at each other. And then like a couple minutes has gone by, and the people in line are like, are we safe? Because they're about to start throwing hands and there's no security around. We were like, oh my God, is there no security on this ship? Like we saw security when we got on the ship, but where is everyone? Like if there's legitimately a fight and there's no security around, like what's the protocol here? What if something does happen on the ship and there's no security? And so that was really very, very alarming for people on the ship. So this is like another thing that could have been better. Like as soon as something gets escalated, like there should probably be some urgency in getting someone there quickly. So anyways, they all like passengers had to pull people off each other, like hold people back. Like this guy was saying like, Dad, stop. You don't stop doing it. And then he's yelling at his son, like, you don't tell me to stop. And then they're getting at each other. People were like literally putting each other in bear hugs, like holding each other back from screaming at each other. Also, people are drunk because they've been drinking as soon as they get on the boat with their free drink packages. So this is just not good. So then everything kind of settles down a little bit, and the security guards come strolling in, laughing, walking so slow, no urgency, and also no sense of like seriousness at all. And it just like felt very scary for the passengers because you're like, oh, so this is the security that showed up 20 minutes late where their people could have already been hurt and they're just like strolling and laughing. It was not a good look. It was not a good look at all. And again, these are all little things that like compound, but you know, I'm only seeing what I'm seeing, and also so is all of these other passengers, and you don't know what the experiences of the other passengers are either. So it's just all these little things add up, and you're like, dang, this cruise hasn't even left yet, and this sucks. So whatever. Then about 5 minutes later, they made an announcement, something along the lines of, we're going to be good news. We're going to take off soon. Now, eventually they made an announcement about how they needed to wait for the court martial. Maybe I made that up. It's like, or the safe court martial. No, I think it's the Coast Guard. I think they needed to make sure they needed to wait for like the Coast Guard to come and like inspect things to make sure that it was whatever. But like, that was just examples. As soon as they said that, so they didn't announce that we were leaving, unless I missed an announcement, but they were just like announced that we were going to leave soon. But them knowing all of these steps that had to be taken before we left, they could have, again, been more transparent and communicated better, and again, reminded us of what the perks are that we have since things have been taken away from us. So that knowing that they knew that all these steps had to happen before we left was frustrating for the passengers, because they were like, well, why didn't you just tell us that? Like, something you should have, you know, it would have been nice to know that. All these things. Meanwhile, people are like cutting each other in line because they're like, I don't care if we're going to leave soon. I want off this boat. I want them to refund me, and I want off this boat. I don't want to pay for this. I don't care. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go to Puerto Rico. I wanted to go to Puerto Rico. I wanted to go to this, that, and they want off the boat because they are not getting what they paid for. So things are still very high stress because now they're in a rush because they're like, oh shit, now it's going to move and I want off this boat. So yeah. Oh my gosh, it was so crazy. Anyways, I got up to the line. I got my luggage. It was in that room, and that was fine. But then there was more delays, so we ended up missing another port, and all of everyone's excursions. So like if you've been on a cruise before, you know this, but like every time you stop in a different place, you can get off the boat and have like these like planned excursions or adventures. And they make it really easy for you. They guide you to the wherever, and, you know, bring you where you need to go. And everyone's got all messed up because of the changes. So like for me, for example, for somehow literally like every single one of my excursions got canceled. And so you have to deal with like whatever's left over. And so I was able to go like book one excursion, and I went with my family, but then somehow all my other excursions just got canceled, and whatever the leftovers were, I just like wasn't interested in doing them. And so I went from having like an excursion. It was supposed to be a 7-day cruise and 2 days on sea. And so I went from having 5 excursions to just one. I had 5 excursions, and then mine went down to 1. And again, I don't really care that much. I mean, it would have been nicer to do all of the things that I wanted to do, but I don't know. I'm also happy just sitting there baking in the sun with my toes in the sand, drinking a virgin mojito. But yeah, so everyone was very upset about those things too, because people were looking forward to all of these things, understandably so. The other thing is their app on Norwegian's app just wasn't the most user-friendly. And for example, like you can purchase onboard messaging for $10 so that you can like message people on ship. And but you can only message someone if they also paid the $10. So like if you try to message someone who didn't pay for it, they just never would get it. And so like you had to, like everyone had to pay for it in order to use it, whatever. But so like my entire family, for the most part, we wanted to talk to each other on the ship, so we paid for it. But the app didn't even allow push notification, or it didn't have push notifications. So like the messaging was kind of pointless because you would have to just sit there and check, like open up the app to see if you got a message. And then you're like missing all of these things because if you're not paying attention and they want you somewhere, but you didn't see it, then like you just missed, it was just not a good experience. And again, all of these little things that just seem very meaningless compiled on top of each other were very, very frustrating. They were also out of like a lot of things on the ship, like different drinks and food and condiments, like all these random things. And it just seemed as if maybe the staff was, some of the staff was not as seasoned and they were newer and they didn't know what was going on. Who knows? I don't know all the details. I do think that they could have gotten more creative and thought of ways to give back to us without having to spend a lot of money. I don't know. I'd have to sit there and brainstorm, but I'm sure I could come up with something. But, even just like swag that's sitting around that they're trying to get rid of, there's always things that like, if you just sit there and you think of something, or like you could give away free experiences too of, who knows, like people loved karaoke. They legitimately could have been like, you know what, we are missing this, that, and the other, so we're going to extend karaoke for an hour, and people would have been happy. There's so many ways that you can like make an experience so much better without spending money. So I personally, me being a customer experience girly, thinks that they could have done a much, much better job. I also understand that some people are just, what would you call them? Some people are doers and not leaders. And maybe that was like part of the issue too, is, there was probably like so many people kind of like waiting around, figuring out, seeing like what they're being told to do. And not as many people saying like, oh, like, I think this is a good idea. We should do this for our passengers. So I don't know. There was just so many things going on. And, they also, people were really, really upset about their drink packages. I don't know how it usually is on Norwegian, but I do know how it is on other cruises, where if you buy a drink package, you usually are like served your alcohol. Like they'll go around and, not even just alcohol, but just like regular drinks too. They usually have servers that will like walk around and ask you what you need and serve you. But people had to stand at the bar and like wait at the bar for a long time. And so they felt like they weren't getting the use out of their drink package, because when someone gets a drink package, it's an unlimited drinks, and that's like why they get it. And so people were getting very, very frustrated because they weren't getting their drinks. And the bartenders also, I believe there's this cultural thing, because a lot of the staff is from overseas, which is completely fine. I love that. I love like interacting with all kinds of people. And I understand that it's also probably much cheaper for the cruise line to supply those jobs. So, but understanding the culture of these very impatient, rude Americans is really important, because they are, again, impatient and they want things done now. And the bartenders, for the most part, were very, they took their time, and I think that's normal in other cultures. But not for Americans. Americans need everything so quickly. So people were just so upset. They were getting like every little thing they were just very upset about. And they're like, even just like dinner reservations ended up being just overbooked because people were just stuck on this cruise because all of their excursions got canceled, and they were on the ship for 2 extra days that they weren't planning on, and they planned dinners on these days, but now it got shifted to those days. All these things got messed up, and I do feel as if there was ways that we could have communicated better. We could have got creative. We could have been transparent with everything going on, and also just, again, reminding the people of what they were already given in return for the what's going on, and then also reminding everyone that shit happens and it's out of their control, and even though it's out of their control, here's what we can do. All these things they did, though. This is what made people very, very upset. They kept talking about how you can get 20% off your next cruise. And this is very, very relatable to most businesses, actually, because when you're thinking about gifting to your customers, you really need to think about their current experience. It's not just like one size fits all. You have to think about the situation, because in this case, giving someone 20% off your next cruise was not very tasteful, because a lot of these customers, or who knows, I wonder how many like passengers this was their first cruise, but if this was their first cruise experience and they're so upset and all these things are happening, do you really think that they want 20% off the next cruise? Because they're, in their minds, this is all they know about Norwegian Cruise Line. That there's, this is a bad experience. So why would they want to buy another, like pay 80% for a next cruise? I do think, like, if you break it down, 20% is like a big chunk, but that's also another thing that you might need to do too, is like use dollars instead of percentages, all these things, because the psychology behind helping customers and clients and passengers and whatever is really, really important. And again, we don't have psychiatrists or psychologists like working for every industry or whatever, but you really do have to think about what you're giving what your solution is, because I'm sure there's people who use that, but I'd love to know how many people actually booked a cruise for 20% off, and how many first-time cruise goers used it. Maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe it's more than I think. But the negativity about around the cruise was up here. Like, most people were complaining the entire time. And there were some little like spurts of like, it is what it is. I'd rather be here than at work. But those same people were also like, damn, this sucks, because I was looking forward to all these things. So that being said, I think with everything, that it's very, very relatable. And with the cruise being just, it's more of a hospitality type thing, and you're helping passengers rather than customers, but they're customers. They've spent their hard money. It was very interesting to go from, I'm usually in this like virtual world mostly, where you're helping people. You don't actually interact with these people. But I actually think that when you're able to be in person and show that you're a person, they're a person, it gives you this sense of, you have an up, because you can sit there and say, I am so sorry. I just work here, but I'm going to figure this, like, we're going to figure out the best solution with the tools that we have. And no matter what, we're both stuck on this cruise. So let's just make the most out of it. And I don't know, if I can give you exactly what you want, but let's figure out something I can give you. And I think that they didn't do a good job at exercising that. And again, it is so hard for those employees to sit there and just get yelled at and yelled at and yelled at. So I do feel so bad. And I would love to know more behind the scenes, because my fix-it brain, I'm a problem solver. I just wanted to sit there and fix everything and just figure out what all the pieces were and put them all together and just make everyone happy. And I also am so curious about like the retention of those passengers who went on this cruise, because I know like my family's not very happy, and I don't know, like that's 14 people that you'll probably never see on the cruise out of the 2,000. And who knows, like I wonder about the financials behind it, because I think that there could have been a lot of money dumped into it, but then depending on the retention rate of like repeat cruise goers, which I think happens quite a bit. Like people, if they have a good experience on a cruise, they're like, wow, this was so worth it, I want to do it again. And I think that theoretically, there's a lot of things they could have done for free, right? Because you can get creative. We talked about that. But even if they poured a little bit more money into the passengers, again, I don't know, maybe it cost $1 million to fix the engine or whatever they had to do. Who knows? I'm sure there was a lot of money lost from Norwegian. Also, I don't know how insurance works. But theoretically, in my mind, I would think that if you think about the retention of your passengers, and if you invest in them, it's like sampling or, giving someone something for free because they'll come back and spend more. If you think about that, they probably lost a lot of money from this ship, this current trip. But then if you look at their retention numbers and think about like all of the people that they lost from this cruise, and then something that's really hard to calculate is the brand damage from like word of mouth, because all these people are going back to their families and their friends and they're telling them about the horrible experience that they had. It's just not a good look for Norwegian. It's just not a good look. I was like, oh my gosh, I was just like feeling so bad about the entire thing. And even just me, I don't know. I would like to give a Norwegian another chance. And so I'm not super whatever. I'm agnostic. I'm either way. But I do think that trip, it's going to be very, very painful for Norwegian, because people are also posting on Facebook. There was like over 400 people in this Facebook group just like talking shit, making fun of them. Like they're trying to demand entire refunds, and now they're going to be like going and demanding all these refunds that maybe they do end up getting. But then like now that even if they get it, do you think they're going to come back? I don't think so. I just, it was a very interesting experience, but it made me want to buy a cruise ship and start my own cruise line. That's what it made me do. I love a good challenge, and it was just very interesting. And I was like, I have to talk about this on the podcast. And I'm also going to feature a little story on the newsletter. If you guys haven't already subscribed to the newsletter, you can do that in the show notes. And so I just talked about the cruise for an hour. It's great. Anyways, I feel like I feel really refreshed. With all that being said, I really enjoyed taking the time off, unplugging. I think a cruise is actually such a good way to unplug, because you don't really have service or internet. Like you can get Wi-Fi, but it doesn't work that well. And then it like really forces you to unplug. And so it was very, very good for me because I have been struggling with just overworking myself. So I personally came back feeling very refreshed. And yeah, I feel good. I'm super happy that I got some time off. I'm back at work now, back at the agency, back doing my thing. I'm working on things. I maybe like, well, actually, no, you guys got to follow me on my socials to see kind of like my investment in myself kind of thing. I've been doing a lot of like self work where I'm making sure that I'm taking care of myself or trying to, and going to therapy and being kind to myself, all of these things that I really neglect because of work. So I'm working on all these things for myself, and it was really, really good to have the break from vacation and be back. So I'm really happy to be back to work. I actually missed working so much. I actually started, I know I just was like, oh, I've unplugged from work so much, blah, blah. But what I've realized, and I'm talking about when I'm talking about this in like my coaching sessions and my therapy, that my like 9 to 5, I have like one client that I work on 9 to 5, is like, that feels like I love it, but it feels like work. But when I work on the agency, it feels just like a fun hobby. And so as long as I take care of myself and I'm eating right and I'm making time to exercise and then to have a social life and like all of those things, as long as I'm like taking care of myself, then fitting in agency stuff is more of like a hobby to me that like will pay me in the long run. And so that being said, I started writing an ebook. So it's going to be, I have no idea when I'll like launch it, but recently sharing my story, which if you haven't watched it, it's the podcast before this, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's just like something about sharing my story. There's a link on my Instagram _ZoeKahn_. It's in my link on Instagram. It just says my story. People are wanting to know about like how I got to where I am and like how they can get into it. And we've talked about making these resources, and I want to start it with customer experience, because getting into even just like the support side of customer experience changed my life. And I do think that we do it in a different way. And I want to share it with people. So I started writing the ebook. It's going to be going to be like some kind of like a course base, but also have some heavier like reading material. And my intention is that you can like read it from front to cover, or you can just skim through it and just do the checklists of the whatever works best for your brain. But I don't know when it'll be out, but I started working on it, and it's really, really like fun. And I also, what was the other thing? I had like a big breakthrough. I felt like, I can't remember. It must not have been that big, but I'm really excited to just keep trucking along. I'll be going to New York in next week. So if you're listening to this and you're in New York the first week of August, hit me up, because I think I'm going to try to plan like a networking dinner or something. And I'm excited for that New York trip. I feel like I haven't done New York like right yet. So I'm going to go do it right. And yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, rate the podcast. So we really, really appreciate all ratings and subscriptions and all those things. So we couldn't have the podcast without you guys, and we are really, really grateful for the listeners. Also, excuse me, Jackie's taking the bar tomorrow to Tuesday, July 30th, and we really, really are putting good vibes out there and hope for many, many updates with Jackie, because we miss her, and I want everyone go message Jackie and tell her to move in with me, because I miss her. And anyways, now I'm rambling, but I love you guys. We'll catch you in the next one. See you next week.